Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Islamic Life with me, Raza Ghazim. Is the Westernness of Western Muslims a point of departure from the Muslim Ummah? Is the Westernness a barrier or an identity that requires attention? To what extent can this identity work for the unity as part of an Ummah?
Islam as a religion can never be under threat. Allah has promised to protect His word and the truth, and thus Muslims should not fear threat to Islam as a religion. However, what Muslims should and are legitimately fearful of is their future in the West. Given the recent events following President Trump taking over the White House, give us enough cause for concern. And these anti-Muslim sentiments, aimed at targeting and punishing Western Muslims, is not limited to the USA. Many European countries are full of the Islamophobic rhetoric quite openly. So what should Western Muslims do to protect themselves and their identities as Western Muslims? Is the creation of an independent Western Islam, anchored not in the traditions of Islamic countries, but in the cultural reality of the West, the answer? Does this then require a fresh reading of Islamic sources, interpreting them for a Western context, and demonstrating how a new understanding of universal Islamic principles can open the door to integration into Western societies?
We're honored to be joined by our esteemed guest, Professor Tariq Ramadan, to discuss all of these issues. Welcome to the program, Professor.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam. I wanted to start off by asking that how much of a threat are Muslims?
I think what is important is that there are two things that we need to say when it comes to Muslims living in a new environment. Is that the new environment, many things in the new environment have nothing to do with Islam. So it could be a threat because it could undermine the fundamentals and the principles and the fundamental tenets of Islam. So we need to know exactly what are these tenets we are talking about, and at the same time we need to understand the surrounding society. Culturally speaking, politically speaking, socially speaking, there are many potential threats that we have here. On the other side, what is also important is for the Muslims to get a deep understanding of the historical background within which they find themselves. So it's a two-way process in this discussion.
And within that, what is the future of Muslims and Islam in the West? I mean, does it have a future, especially under current developments and so on?
You know, the starting point is that we should not be scared for Islam. Islam is protected, and we know that whatever happens to us as Muslims, Islam as a religion is going to remain. So the starting point is to be very positive about the way we deal with our religion.
Can I interrupt and be slightly negative and perhaps put this to you, that within the old Soviet Union, there was a complete blackout with regards to religion. And the religion of Islam, in terms of practice, in terms of the things that were going on, was, in a sense, quite decimated in terms of what happened there. Yeah. Now, Islam might be well and alive, and Allah is guaranteed to protect it, etc., but there's an actual impact on the people who purport to follow.
You're right, it has an impact, but at the same time, what I meant is look at what happened in Russia and ex-Soviet Union. It's at the end, Muslims are many. Islam is alive, and there are lots of movements and people working at the grassroots level. So whatever happened in a specific period of time, Islam as a religion is there. It's going to happen exactly the same in Europe. We are facing problems. We have lots of challenges, and we have to face them. But the starting point, and this is why I was saying this, the starting point is to remain positive about our historical experience. Second, it's to be clear that there is only one Islam. We don't have Islams as sociologists are speaking about. You know, there are Islams in order to get a sense of the complexity. There is one Islam, a core of fundamental principles that are all the same for Muslims. We agree on the creed and the aqidah. We agree on the 5 pillars. We agree on the fundamentals of what are our obligations and what is prohibited in our religion. Now, in Islam, with the same principles, we have many cultures. So the Iranian culture is not our cultures, and we need to get this right. So when we come to Europe, or we come to the West, in Canada, in the States, or here in Europe, we have many cultures, and what happened to our African brothers and sisters, they took from the surrounding cultures and remain Muslims as to the principles, is exactly what we have to do. It's more challenging in the West because it's as if there is this perception that is conflicting, because the narrative today, the rational of all this, media coverage, and we're talking about Trump, is saying, oh, Islam by essence is against the West, or the West by essence is against Islam. And I think that we have to go beyond this and try to get a more subtle and nuanced way of dealing with cultures, and Western cultures in particular.
At the start of your answer, there was a bit in which you actually mentioned that the long-term history of Islam and Muslims will be fine. Should I take from that the short-term version could actually be quite bleak? And if that threat exists from people like Trump, is there anything that can be done to avert that?
You are right. That I think this is exactly what, a few years ago I was telling Muslims, don't think it's going to be easy. We are going to face very difficult times. And what we see now, it's not only after, September the 11th in the States, it's deeper and broader than that. We need to get it right. It's not only about the war on terror. It's really making Islam alien to the West, alien to the Western narrative, alien to the dominant culture. So it's really a power struggle, and it's perceived as such, and it's taught as such, that Islam per se is a problem. So we are going to face many challenges, and the starting point is, it's not enough for you to be a citizen. You have to buy the so-called values of the country, and this is where you have to. It's as if to be a Westerner, you have to be less a Muslim. And even there is a reconstruction of what the West is, because there are many things who, people are defining the West, and people are saying, even if you were to ask, the Pope, the Christian Pope, he wouldn't agree with what you are saying about the values of the Western values. So I think that we need to have a very deep understanding. On the short run, it's going to be difficult. We are going to deal with cultural realities. It's going to be difficult. Social realities. And the shift, for example, all the social problems that we have in many European countries, and even what we saw with the United States, it's what I call, the cultural shift, is to essentialize, is to culturalize, is to ethnicize and Islamize the social problems by saying it's all about the fact that they are black or Arabs and Muslims and Asian. It's not about, policies. So I think that it's going to be very difficult. On the long run, we should understand that we could be victims, but the only way to win is not to nurture the victim mentality. Is to be clear on the fact that not only we abide by the law of the countries in the West, but we are nurturing a sense of belonging, remembering what was said by all the messengers and the prophet when they were rejected by their own people. Say, Ya qawmi, my people. So this is my country. And my answer to Trump is that we are not going to accept for you to put us or to ban us from our own countries, because we are at home now.
You talked about the shifting of our and the identities that are being created for us in many different spheres and so on. Are those identities, many of them where the Muslims are oppressed, because while not creating a victim mentality, that recognition is there. Are they different from the identities that are there perhaps in Muslim countries?
Yes, they are different in a way. All these question of identity, it's coming something. It's very much connected to three things: the global world, globalization, this, and what it means. The globalization is Western dominant culture. It's a global culture. It's a global economy, and it's a global, communication, world of communication. And this has an impact, even in our countries of origin, because it has an impact over there. So we need to get this globalization, but there are two other things that are also very important in the impact of this. It's this whole culture that is opposing people and coming from the global to a very narrow understanding of your identity, and you nurture this with for political reasons, and you nurture this to create a new enemy, or at least to stigmatize people. So this has to do with the global world, and it has to do with what we are witnessing within our society, with populists reacting to the global world by saying these are our identities, and we come back to something which is a very narrow understanding of who we are. We should be very cautious with this, because Muslims sometimes they respond to a question and they don't question the question. They don't ask, what is this? I'm not going to put myself or to define myself in a narrow way and a narrow identity. Our identity as Muslims, the starting point of everything, it's not an identity based on a close culture or a close nationality. I'm not first an Egyptian or a Swiss, no. I belong to my principles. So the starting point, the pillars of my identity are principles. It could be, for example, the fact that I say there is no God but God, so it's Tawheed. It's also the way that I'm a believer. It's a concept of life. And
but there is sorry to interrupt, but there is a manifestation of that is rooted in the culture that you're from, no?
That's exactly the point. The point is, from where do we start? I belong to my principles, and my principles, there is my connection to God wherever I am, the principle of my faith, I practice, I pray, I give the zakat wherever I am. So these are, and I teach and I learn wherever I am, and I belong to a specific society, and I have to participate, because my faith is about participating and being committed to values, principles, and doing what is good. So these are the pillars, but it's not a closed identity. Now, with these principles, I come and I settle everywhere. I could settle in any country, and then I take from the culture things that are part of the surrounding culture, not in contradiction with my principles and not in contradiction with the surrounding culture. So any culture in the name of my principles should be accepted in a selective way. I take the good and I avoid the bad.
Lots more questions coming from that, but we do like to keep this show as interactive as possible and really value your opinion. Here's what you sent us this week.
This week we asked, what is the future of Islam and Muslims in the West? Ahmed from England said, I think the future of Muslims in the West is bright. Despite what we hear from politicians and the biased media, more and more people are turning to Islam, and this will eventually strengthen Western Muslims. Sakina from France said, these are certainly difficult days for Western Muslims. There's an attack on Muslims from every corner in the West. I am worried about our future in the West. And Sadiq from Norway said, Islamophobia is spreading like a wave in the Western world, threatening our very existence here. But I think our future will depend on how we decide to respond to this threat.
The future of Islam is bright and rosy, mashallah. All I can see in front of me is whatever the hadith that have been revealed to us, that Islam is about unity and peace, and more and more Muslims are waking up.
Islam is a peace. If we are talking about the Christianity or Jewish or Hindu or whatever, it's a 5% or 1% of the community. If they are bad, we can't say all the Christian is bad. If 1% they are fundamentalists, we can't say all the Muslim is bad.
Future of Islam is very bright. It's very bright. People are becoming Muslim because they know the reality. What is the reality? So whatever is happening in the world, so we are no more stupid. People are no more stupid. Whatever they are showing, media is showing, this is absolutely wrong. When the people realize, they open their eyes, they know this, what is the reality.
What can I say? That's only I can say. Muslim are really struggling, and they have to be united, actually. If they're united, they can move forward very easily. That's only my message to all Muslims people.
That's all the comments we have for this week. If you'd like to have your views featured in the show, be sure to follow us on Facebook or join us on Twitter.
Lots of interesting and a mixed set of views actually coming out. Some very bright and hopeful about where we are at and who we are, but also some which are talking about the threats that are being faced. That's always seems to be there in the background. It's not just in the background, in the foreground. Now, within that, how do Muslims go about forging a Muslim identity within this? You know, you were talking earlier, just before these clips, about taking what's good from there and trying to integrate that into the in terms of your practice and so on.
You know, one of the most important thing is why did I start by saying we have to be positive? Because it has to do with your psychology at the same time. The way you look at the world around you, if you think that you are threatened from all, this, cultural challenges, political challenges, you end up defining yourself exactly how the people want you to define yourself. And this is the game. The game is I push you to say, oh, what is your identity? Are you going to integrate? And you end up defining yourself through the eyes of the people who are asking the questions. So we have to be very clear on this. Confident. This is what I call the 7C, and the starting point is to be confident and to deal with the world by saying, look, we have our principles, we belong to our principles, we abide by the law of the country, and we keep on as citizens questioning some of the laws when it's not implemented the right way, when it comes to no equal rights, discrimination on the labor market, and so on and so forth. So I would say that the way we look at it is to start understanding that we don't only have one identity, we have principles and we have multiple identities. And I'm saying to everyone being in the West, coming from elsewhere, coming from Asian country or from North African and African countries, don't forget your culture of origin. And if you are converted here, don't cut yourself from your past. This is positive, part of your identity, and this is the way I define myself. I'm Egyptian by memory. Yes, I'm Swiss by nationality, but I have multiple identity. No one is going to tell me to be a good Swiss means that I have to forget about my past, and I have to celebrate that past. At the same time, being involved and being involved within the society and to get the knowledge from within. So this is also something which is very important. And to also assess what are the threats that we are facing. First, there is one which has to do with education. How in the West you transmit spirituality to your kids. That's essential. And spirituality means the principles of your religion, but the meaning, the connection to God in a consumerist society is not an easy task, and it's not easy for the Jews, it's not easy for the Christians, it's not easy for the Muslims. So we have here this challenge of education. We also have a very important challenge is how to remain consistent within this society, where the starting point of everything in this consumerist and the global culture is to tell you, you feel it, do it. And you have to resist. So how do you teach, this awareness that you have to decide that you are responsible, a sense of responsibility, while the people are talking about the sense of being the victim, you have to have the sense of being the subject and the one who decides. So these are things that are very important at the individual level in the way we teach and in the way we live our daily life. And at the same time, how are we going to avoid being isolated from the surrounding society and be an added value? Because at the end of the day, if we are in the West, it's not by accident. Are we in the West to please our fellow Westerners, or are we to the West to bring something to the West as we think, not to convert the people, it's none of our business, but to bring values and to remind the people of what is good and how we have to protect the good.
Now, within all of that, there is this idea that there are multiple things going on. One is that you're trying to be positive, but at the same time recognizing that there is going to be negativity towards you. You're going to have these oppressive policies. Within those oppressive policies that are going to be coming out, you're saying that we shouldn't be identifying ourselves based and looking at it through that lens. But that is, to an extent, going to have an impact on people, and there needs to be something said about that in order for that recognition to be had of what's actually going on, the reality.
Yes, you are right. I think that we have to confront the narrative that is set or the way things are presented. So we need to be present. We need to analyze the way people are describing us. So To do this should be done, and at the same time we should not be on the defensive. It's not to listen and to respond and that's it. No, we need to get it right, to understand, because you are not going to be heard by your fellow citizens or also your governments if you don't listen and you don't understand what is the game and how people are playing with this. Not only in the West, we need to understand that our presence in the West, we are going to vote. And the people, the politicians, they know if we start voting, it has an impact on the domestic policies and the foreign policies. So it's something which is wider than our presence in the West. This is why we need to study, we need to understand, but our presence should not be a reactive presence. It has to be active and proactive. And we need to get with a vision. What is missing today? On the cultural level, the social level, the political level, even the economic level, it's a vision for the future. So it's not to ask ourselves being passive and waiting for, is it going to be nice? Is it going to be fine? No, it's not going to be fine if we are passive. It's not going to be fine if we just look and hope that things are going to change. And this is where we need to understand, in Allah, لا يغيروا ما بقوم حتى يغيروا ما بأنفسهم, that God is not going to change something in a society if they don't change themselves. So you have to be involved and we have to be active, understanding that our contribution is not only Muslim responding to the surrounding society. We have fellow human beings who are sharing principles, who are sharing vision with us. They are sharing the ethics and ethical values. Let us also identify the people who are on our side. It's not Muslims versus the others. It's people of principle versus people with no principles.
One of the things that happens as you carve out an identity, a Muslim identity within the Western context, a Western Muslim identity, perhaps we could say, how does that play itself out within the context of other Muslim identities that exist around the world? You know, you talked about the Iranian identity, the Arab identity, perhaps the subcontinental identity, Malaysian, Indonesia, whatever you want to say. How is that going to be different? How is that going to interact? What's going to happen to work together?
Yeah, it is already different, even within a society. Go to the United States of America and go to the inner cities with, the black people. Their culture is not the culture of the white migrants coming and being American. Even after the second and the third generation, it's not the same. In Europe, for example, you go to France and you look at the people the way they are, and you come to the UK, it's not the same culture. So how are we going to do this? There are Muslims, both of the people, and they are Muslims, but they don't have the same culture. Why? Because the impact of the culture, it's very important wherever you are. So we need to understand that the universality of Islam is not one culture, is a diversity of culture. So we need to get this and sometimes, and this is why, we have the fatwa. The fatwa is a legal opinion that we know that it's not exportable. You cannot just, if I give you a fatwa, I'm not going to give the same to somebody, even with the same question. But the same question is no longer the same question because the environment is not the same. So if you are asking the same question in two different places, it's not the same question. You need to get this. So this is in the legal tradition known by Muslims and a long time ago. We need to come exactly with the same understanding that there is cultural diversity, that we need to deal with this. We need to get it from within. It's not only about language, it's about feeling and feeling good. And the starting point is for everyone, wherever you are asked to be faithful to principles, but you have the right to feel good within your culture. So do it and be part of the process.
Principle coming out really strong. The Western Muslim is yet another part of the Muslim family. While the need is there to recognize the cultural context and respond to the needs of that identity, it is not a marker of separation. The questions that need to be asked is, what is the Western Muslim doing to bring together the Ummah and enhancing the identity of the Muslim Ummah? The strength of the Ummah has the potential to be greater than its constituent parts if this identity seeks to serve rather than just carve or just care for its own future. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have today. I would like to thank Professor Tariq Ramadan for joining us, and I thank you all for watching. Until next time, goodbye.